I'm Billy S, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about my favourite moments in Soulsborne as I reveal my best part from each Soulsborne game. The last few videos focused on the best and worst features from these games, based on my opinion. This time we're focusing more on the exact moments that bring me joy. Effectively, I ask myself one question. During any given playthrough of each Soulsborne game, what moment do I most look forward to? Is it my favourite boss, my favourite area, a distinct sequence that just stands out in the mind? And that's what today's video is about. So be sure to parry that subscribe button to stay up to date on all my future videos, and a massive thank you to everyone who tuned into my worst features in Soulsborne video. It blew up. I wasn't expecting it. You've really made the end of this year a good one for me. So without further ado, the best part of each Soulsborne game. Let me know yours down below. For Demon Souls, I didn't have to think too hard on this one. There is one moment that always stands out whenever I replay this game that I always look forward to. And for me, it is the battle with the Storm King. While my favourite boss in the game is still False King Allant, I can't help the level of excitement and trepidation that buzzes through my body when I think about rematching the giant manta ray. The other archdemons are formidable. The dragon god is the giant fiery creature whose boss fight sucks, but the build-up was relatively strong. Maiden Estrella is one of the most tragic characters in the game, and honestly the franchise. And the old monk is here. But there is something so special about a boss the size and scale of the Storm King, where the only way to take him down is to take up arms and pull out the Storm Ruler from the stone within the battlefield so you can cleft the skies in twain to find your victory. It's the first true gimmick fight as we know them nowadays, and set a tone for bosses like Yorm and Rykard. Nobody says the Storm King is hard unless you're playing on New Game++, where all the minions in the arena do crazy damage, but it's the spectacle and the fun of the fight that I really enjoy. I'm reminded of Shadow of the Colossus, taking down a creature that is so much bigger than you, it almost feels wrong and criminal. The only thing that could have made the fight better was if we saw glimpses of this archdemon in the prior levels of the Shrine of Storms. A figure in the clouds, hard to see, a teaser of what's to come. I've got a weakness for this guy, and it will never fail to pump me up every time I step out onto that rain-swept clifftop. For Dark Souls, I originally wanted to talk about the shortcut between Firelink Shrine and the Undead Parish, before realizing I had just talked about that exact moment a few weeks ago. What can I say, interconnected level design is just a highlight. So I'm gonna shelve that idea in favor of a different moment we all likely found cathartic. Collecting the Lord Vessel for the first time in Anor Londo. Representing the turning point of the game, and arguably the peak of the base game's quality, you have fought your way through the land of Lordran, the Burg, the Depths, Blighttown, Sen's Fortress, Darkroot Garden, and lastly, Anor Londo. You have become intimate with these lands. You're a master of getting where you need to go as quickly as you can because you had no choice. There were no bonfire warping. You either walked to your destination or you turned the game off. Then we take down the toughest boss so far, Ornstein and Smo, who are a true test for new players and old players alike. I can't say I struggle with them much anymore myself, but you still have to lock in, lest you fall victim to a janky Ornstein dash. And then you're introduced to Guinevere and given the Lord Vessel. You meet this character who feels so much more larger than life, a living goddess bathed in warmth. She has a sweet, echoey voice that's soothing like honey in the throat, and she grants you the Lord Vessel, and you find out you can now warp to different bonfires. The moment you realize you've gotten a completely new freedom in Dark Souls, a fast travel option that feels entirely earned and justified is magical. It's like unlocking the airship in a Final Fantasy game, or unlocking the boat in Golden Sun: The Lost Age. You're being rewarded for everything you did up to this point, and the game now trusts you can handle what's next. Sadly, it does mean the following areas are less interconnected and more linear, because you can just warp away from them now, but that doesn't change that first moment where you can head back to Andre whenever you want to get upgrades, or go to Firelink and see your merchants whenever you want. Interconnectivity is great, but freedom of movement is special. For Dark Souls 2, this was the easiest pick on the list. What else could it be than taking my first steps into the land of Drangleic as I set my gaze upon Majula for the first time? I really can't explain why Dark Souls 2's hub is so ingrained in my heart. It's this gorgeous little seaside village perched atop a cliff, and maybe it's because it reminds me of my hometown, a little fishing village in Cornwall in the UK. There's a real community in this hub. A talking cat, a merchant, the Emerald Herald, and a man suffering from depression. We even have a death monument to track our tragic demises. And community is a great word for Majula, because in other Souls games, you'll invite NPCs back to your hub, and then 9 times out of 10, they serve a purpose as a merchant, and then head out to go die. But those in Majula, the many people you can bring back to your settlement, don't share this fate. They stay as vendors, as people to talk to, and often update their wares depending on your placement in the game, which is a gameplay way of saying, these characters stay with you. You get used to having everyone here, you want the best for them, and they're actually doing the smart thing and staying in the one safe place in Drangleic, as long as you don't piss off the pigs. There's also an aesthetic to Majula that is so warm and inviting, similar to Guinevere in Anor Londo, the yellows and reds of a sun that has passed its prime, and the quiet chimes and notes of the best hub theme in any video game, contrasted with the cold wind that I can feel chilling the bone. Oh, it's perfection. There's a melancholy to everything, especially with the Emerald Herald and her rather dour demeanor, but even then she's by your side, waiting for you at the far bonfire, waiting for someone to bring life back to Drangleic and to this poor, decrepit town. And I know you all care for Majula like I do, as there is an Elden Ring mod that changes the Round Table Hold into Majula. PC players, you really have it special, don't you? For Bloodborne, I think this will be a popular moment. When the game first launched, none of us knew what the insight mechanic was for. So you can imagine our surprise when, as we continued to gain insight, things in the world would change. The doll comes to life on your first insight point, and from then on, the more you got, there were more differences in the world. Most notably, certain enemies having more varied attacks, and the churchgoers in the Cathedral Ward having entirely different movesets. Spectral Scythes, anyone? How about the forest before Hemwick Charnel Lane, where if you have no insight, the shade creatures don't spawn in, resulting in a lovely walk through the trees, as opposed to being harassed every few steps. Yet, I wish I could go back to the days where people got to 40 insight before triggering the Blood Moon, because the reveal of the amygdalas around Cathedral Ward is one of the most striking moments in any video game. There is absolutely nothing to hint at this being the case, aside from the amygdala that can summon you into the DLC, as prior to the DLC being released, you'd just get grabbed out of nowhere for trying to pick up an armor set. The realization that Bloodborne was actually delving into cosmic horror, revealing creatures beyond our comprehension who were there all along, is at a level that I genuinely find harrowing and so exciting. Check on YouTube and look at some of the genuine blind reactions to people who got 40 insight, allowing them to see the amygdalas. It is the funniest stuff you'll see, and a real turning point in any Bloodborne playthrough. Of course, most of us get this moment courtesy of the Blood Moon rising, showing them all hanging out in Yahar'gul, but even then you can still go back to Cathedral Ward to see our lovely neighbour hanging out over our sanctuary. It sends shivers down the spine. For Dark Souls 3, I can safely say that my favourite moments are boss fights. It's what I think the game does best, and there are a very large chunk of late game bosses that just excite me on a level wholly different from something like Dark Souls or Bloodborne. I couldn't narrow it down though, so I've decided to throw Sister Fried and Slave Knight Gale onto this list as the primary endgame fights for the DLCs. It's funny because I don't look forward to exploring the DLC zones all that much. I guess I got my fill of being angel blasted in the Dreg Heap or comboed by 1,000 archers in the Ringed City. Yet the fact that both Gale and Sister Fried keep my excitement to the point where I'll willingly play through 2 DLCs I don't personally enjoy 100% is a real testament to how much I think their bosses are great. Sister Fried is one of only 2 bosses in the series to have a 3-stage boss fight, not including Sekiro, shared only by the Shadow Tree avatar from Elden Ring's DLC, and I always love a challenge. Knowing I've fought her enough to where I understand her mechanics and all I have to do is see if my muscle memory can bring me the win, that's just fun. Especially that last phase where the visual effects are just right and the energy is electric and the candlesticks are floating in the air. I'm so glad they never patched that. It's such a charming bug. While Gale is literally a perfect ending to the series, one of the best fights I've had the pleasure of facing with a perfect level of build-up as it progresses, great music, great design, fantastic arena. In fact, I actually think in the footage you're seeing, I killed him too quickly, at least compared to my previous go-arounds, which makes me want to face him again. I don't want every entry in this video to be about a boss, but I can't deny that for the more combat-focused titles, they're just fitting decisions for this type of list. Piggybacking off of my statement at the end of the last entry, I can't deny that Sekiro, being the combat-focused game it is going to have a boss as my favorite part. And you all know where this is going if you've seen any of my Sekiro videos. Isshin Ashina is the best final boss in the series and the pinnacle of Sekiro for me. It's not just that he's a hard fight that challenges all of my skills I've learned across my playthrough, nor is it that he's well balanced so that if you're in the know there are tons of little tricks to make him easier, as Allfather is arguably a harder fight and the inner battles even more so. But Isshin Ashina just works for me and excites me because not only of the fight, but the lore. This is a man who just perished from illness, brought back through a curse by his grandson, who takes his own life so that his grandfather can carry out his wishes with Isshin in his prime. It's giving what the consort in Shadow of the Erdtree wanted to achieve in terms of, oh, you get to fight this boss in their prime. But with Sekiro being a more story-focused game, the payoff that we're facing a younger Isshin just hits so much harder. Also, he climbs out of a neck wound, which is the most metal shit I have ever seen in my life. He has a gun, he has lightning attacks, he has a sword and a spear, and the pathetic fallacy of the ever-increasingly violent weather as the protagonist comes to blows with this man, their ideals clashing in one climactic fight, really lights a fire in the English literature student I once was. I'm usually not that excited by the final bosses in these games. Dark Souls 3 and Sekiro are the exceptions, and I'm glad that some of the games in FromSoft's library are able to stick the landing and really hit a peak at the very end of your playtime. It just makes every subsequent playthrough a ride you're going up and up and up. The perfect climax. Elden Ring, my favorite part. It's gotta be Leyndell, right? Yes, it's my favourite area in the game, and yes, it houses my favourite boss in the base game, Morgott the Omen King, but there's just something really exciting about exploring Leyndell for the first time and realising the reality. Leyndell is what Anor Londo wanted to be. You can go anywhere and everywhere that you can see in this city. There's a giant dragon corpse you climb up to progress. There are so many rooftops you can run and jump across that I've likely never been to. There are so many nooks and crannies here with different enemy types and encounters to keep the experience feeling fresh. And the stunning visuals and the surprisingly clean look of the town, despite being a capital that has fallen into ruin, there's nothing else like it. Legacy dungeons are magical in Elden Ring. They really went above and beyond. The main bosses as well really hit this home with memorable experiences and encounters. But what always drew Morgott above the rest for me was how he's one of the few fights that is relevant to your character's story. Margit the Fell was such a big influence over the pre-release of Elden Ring, the main boss aside from Godric that people were introduced to, and taking him down was part of the magic of getting into Elden Ring. So the reveal that he wasn't killed and has in fact been stalking you this whole time, waiting for you to grow until he can no longer ignore your flames of ambition, that reveal that he was the king of the lands between hits incredibly hard. Not to mention being such a tragic figure in charge of a city with no wards, no citizens. There's nobody left to rule, the Shattering destroyed so much, and we're the ones picking up the pieces as we explore Leyndell. It showed the ultimate scope of Elden Ring and what Miyazaki could achieve, and it leaves me ever more excited for the future, and ever more excited to re-explore this area on every future playthrough. The DLC furthered this with a more deeply interconnected open world with pockets of things to do around every corner, and I just want to see a game where every area is a Leyndell in terms of quality. Maybe not quantity. A big complaint I had with Dark Souls 3 was how its early game feels a little too complex to jump into in terms of giant areas to explore, and I worry an Elden Ring sequel or successor could fall into the same trap, but I have faith. I just want my breath to be taken away as I step into a new zone like I did Leyndell. It's very rare for a game to just make me go, wow, as I'm playing, and that's my best moment. And that's my list. Which best moment was your favorite from this video? Let me know down below, and be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all of my future videos. Once again, a massive thank you to everybody who has been watching my previous videos. The last one blew up so tremendously much that I am just in a really good mood. I am going to warn anyone who is listening to this, there will be no video this Friday. My voice honestly is not feeling very great, and this is the last script I can record before it decides to go die, so we'll be back in December with more videos. A massive shout out to my YouTube channel members for supporting me for another month. You guys are amazing, thank you so much. And if you guys want to follow me, be sure to check out my Blue Sky. That's where I'm active now, and it is a really nice place. You actually see my posts when I post things. It's crazy. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Adios.